Alright, so this video is going to be a little demonstration or tutorial on how to create a part that came up on the forum. The question is, this is based on a SolidWorks Advanced Surface model, but how do you create this in Alibre to come up with the same part, since Alibre does not have surfacing? So the steps I'll illustrate here is how to create a solid model and then shell it to the thickness of 1 millimeter, and we'll be using some lofting techniques and applying some guide curves. And for this one, there's going to be a total of 4 guide curves, one in the front defining this shape here, one on the back for this one, and then for the side we're going to go through steps to develop some 3D guide curves so that we can get this convoluted shape in here the way this drawing is. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a revolve around the bottom here to get this bottom part. And then we're going to create a plane offset from the default plane at 80 millimeters to create this shape here. And now with V28 and version 28 we have the slot tool, so we can use that to define this shape. Otherwise, in prior versions you need to create this with arcs and lines. And then we'll develop some guide curves to connect to the bottom and to the sketch. And we'll go through all those steps. So let's get started with the bottom and create a revolve for the bottom base on this. So just got a sketch here on the XY plane, and we'll have a line, and we'll have a top line here, and then we'll have an arc, and the radius is going to be 15. And then we'll make this coincident center point to this line, and then we'll have a vertical from this point to that point, and dimension this at 40 millimeters, and this height here is going to be 4, and then we'll go ahead and revolve this. And that gives us our base. Okay, now we're going to insert a plane, and that plane is going to be 80 millimeters off. Let's get the right, cancel this here. Let's get the right orientation here. We'll go off the front plane and insert a plane 80. We'll apply that, and then on this plane we're going to start a sketch, and we're going to use our new slot tool, and the slot is going to be, say, 25 center to center at 0, and the radius is going to be 20, or the diameter rather is 20 on the millimeter, 10 millimeters on the radius. And then we'll constrain this, and we'll use a technique that Ex Machina has developed or shown, using the midline constraint to constrain these center points, middle centered on the origin. And then we'll dimension this at we have to put this dimension up here. We're at 104 to the top, minus 10. We're going to be at 94 to the center of that. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start defining the location of our guide curves, and we need to connect our guide curves to this sketch and to the bottom, that's our revolve. So in order to do that, we're going to have to insert some points on this sketch for the front part. So let's go back into our sketch, and we need some points that are not, let me get my dimensions out of the way here. There. Since our sketch is going to be on the YZ plane, we need to have some points on the midpoint of these lines and on the center of this arc for our 3D sketch. So we're going to insert some nodes, and we'll grab the center point there, and we'll put one here. And now on those nodes, we're going to insert a point from a sketch. So individually, we'll grab this point and apply that, and this node, and put a point there, and this node, and apply for a point there. Now when we exit the sketch, we can see our 3 points on that sketch that we can attach our sketch lines to for our guide curves. So now the next one is going to be, we'll activate a sketch on the YZ plane, and the first sketch we're going to do is this front one. It's going to be a 36 millimeter radius, and then as it comes off the base here, there's a reverse curve here at 15, and then on the back curve, the radius is not defined on the large size, but the bottom here has a small 15 millimeter radius that leads off the base. So we'll start with this front one at 36, and then we'll finish this off here with a tangent, and this is going to be 15, and we'll just end that there, and we'll make a horizontal constraint between this midpoint and the end point of that radius, and then we'll do some constraints coincident to this line. Now when you select the coincident, it's going to put a reference line on here for us, but now we also need to go from this endpoint to this endpoint. And now let me kind of manipulate our sketch a little bit here, because now our next point that we're going to constrain to is going to be from this node to this point. And now that sketch is fully defined. Okay, now that's our first guide curve. Now the next guide curve is going to be a 2D guide curve, so let's start another sketch. And again, we'll just get a three-point arc here. Finish this off with a tangent arc. And again, this is 15 millimeters. And a horizontal constraint from the endpoint to the center, and then coincident from this endpoint to this edge to get the reference line, and then from the endpoint of the arc to the endpoint of the reference line. And now the final one is going to be coincident from this point, node to this point. And now to make this tangent to this end, we're going to put a vertical constraint between that point and the center point. And now that sketch is fully defined. Okay, so now we have our two 2D guide curves. Now to develop our 3D guide curve, we're going to have to create some extra geometry in here to define this shape here at 90 millimeters. And notice that this is not perpendicular to this horizontal line, and it's not perpendicular to the front here, at least it doesn't appear. It's pretty close, but not quite. And then on the side, we're going to have this shape here, and that's going to be a secondary feature that we're going to develop. So what we'll do is on the XY plane, we're going to start a sketch, And here we'll just have a sketch, and we'll start up here, come down here, and this is going to be 90. And then we'll connect coincident from this point to that point. And from this endpoint to the surface, and we'll make sure that this one here is going to be vertical to the midpoint. And now that's fully defined. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my model tab, and I'm going to create a thin extrude, and be careful which way this thing is projecting, because I'm going to make a mid plane, and I'm going to change my thickness to 1 millimeter, but I'm going to have it go thicken to the inside of the curve, because my line, my guide curve, is on the outside of this, on the outside surface. So let's make that to throw in 140 so that we're going beyond the size of the part. Now this could be a solid model part if you don't have access to thin extrudes. So let me just cancel this. Let me edit this sketch, and we'll just throw a couple of lines in here, and make that vertical. So we could make this as a solid part too, and we're going to get to the same result. So go mid plane, and then we have our part. The only thing that thin extrude does is it gives you a smaller piece of geometry to contend with. Okay, now on the XY plane, we're going to define this shape, to define this curve 92 and the 15 millimeter arc on there. So on the XY, we'll start out with a couple of curves. And we'll go to our tangent curve, tangent arc. And this is 15. And we'll make this end point and center point horizontal. Oops. Horizontal rather, not coincident. Okay, now take this end point and make it coincident to this edge here and to this point. Okay, now we're going to make this coincident to that point, and we're going to dimension this at 92, and there's our shape on that side. Now again, if you did use a thin extrude boss on this, you want the extrusion to be on the inside so that the outside surface is the one that's going to define the shape for the guide curve. But since we're using a solid model in this part, or in this demonstration, let me go back into the sketch and grab a line, and I'll just come down, we'll close that off and go to an extrude, and we want to make sure that we're extruding it beyond oops, let's do a mid plane here. And go 160, Okay, we want to make sure that we're going a little bit beyond the geometry of the first extrusion, because what we're going to do now, so we have these two shapes, we're going to go and click on the down arrow of your sketch, activate sketch. We want to activate a 3D sketch, and what we're going to do is select project to sketch, and we're going to select the intersection line edge of these two pieces of geometry, and we're going to click on them, and now we have our 3D guide curve defined. Now the next thing you want to do is, just for the sake of locking this down, we're going to lock that, lock that 3D guide curve. And the next, now we've got that guide curve done, we're going to come up here and select mirror. We're going to select this piece of extrusion, and we're going to mirror that to the other side. Start another 3D sketch, and again project to sketch, and grab this intersection edge between the two, between these two extrusions. Make sure you get the edge and not the face, and we'll lock that. Okay, so now come up here and we'll suppress those features. So now we have our base, our front oval shape, and our two 2D guide curves and two 3D guide curves. Make sure that you have your 3D sketches and your 2D sketches are separate items in your Design Explorer. So now we do our loft. So we come up here and we select our loft, we select our face, select our sketch, and turn off the preview so we have access to our guide curves. So we'll click on this icon here, it turns off the preview. Now on our guide curves, turn local on, select our guide curves one at a time, and then turn preview back on, and look what you got. It's a piece of junk. Now notice that you've selected the face first and then the sketch. So let me cancel that. So you want to select the sketch, then the face, and now turn off previews and get our guide curves here to local. And select preview, and we're back in business. So now we have our shape defined, and now our selection for our face takeoff. I didn't notice a lot of difference between interpolated and perpendicular. Just looking at the preview, I didn't see a whole lot of change there, but if I change to linear, now there's a big change right in the middle here. So either leave it set to perpendicular or interpolated for the best result following your guide curves. And then click OK on that, and there's your shape. So now the rest of this is a matter of defining this little piece that sticks out of the front, which is going to be a rectangle that's 25 by 10. So if I start a sketch on this face, and we'll do a rectangle by center, and this is going to be 25 by 10, and then we'll constrain this. Let me see, we'll have to get some reference geometry here. So if I project some geometry up in here, do a reference line, and I'll do a center constraint. that's a solid entity. Let's try this. That's not going to work. Yeah, let's get rid of this, and we'll do a vertical from there, and we're going to be 10 down from the top. Well, here we have a point here. We'll do horizontal from this point to this point, and then horizontal on one of these lines. There we go. And now we can extrude this. And this extrusion is going to be 1 millimeter thick. We can pick that up on our shell when we get there, so we'll do an extrusion. It sticks out 10 millimeters, and we'll radius, put a fillet on there of 2. And we have a 2 millimeter radius on this edge and on this edge. And then one more here. There we go. Okay. So we've got our basic shape here now, and I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now I'm going to shell, and our thickness is going to be 1 millimeter. And we're going to remove this face and this face. And okay that. So now we have our basic shape done. We need to add some slots, and we need to develop this little cutout cover piece in the back here. So our slots are going to be 60. There's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, from 60 to down to 20. And it says here the instances vary by 10 millimeters. So each one is going to be 10 millimeters less or shorter, and they're spaced at 5 millimeters. So let's go in on the XY plane. And again, we can use our slot tool. And I'm just going to quickly dimension this at first one is 60, and our width is 5, and again using Machina's centering technique, we'll dimension this first one at 25 from the origin to the bottom of the slot. Okay. Get ourselves oriented to the plane. Okay, now let's so now our next one is going to be 50 and 5, and our next one is going to be 40 and 5. Oops. $40, 5, $60, $50, $40, 30 and 5 and 20 and 5. Okay, now we'll just center each one of these. Okay, and then we'll space them at 5. Okay, now we'll do an extrude cut, and we'll just drag this out through the front. And there's our pattern of slots cut through the front of the part. Okay, we'll go ahead and save this. Now this next step is we're going to actually turn this into 2 pieces. And we're going to cut this back end off and bring it into an assembly as a different part and a different color. So go ahead and we'll start a sketch on the YZ plane, and we'll have an arc, 3-point arc, and this radius is 115. And for this one we're going to project from sketch, and we're going to go back and we're going to grab one of our Loft's guide curves. So we're going to project this in as a reference figure and maintain an association. And now to complete that, we'll do another 3-point arc, endpoint to endpoint, and throw some dimensions on here. Now first let's constrain this endpoint to this arc, and this point to the arc there. And now we can dimension. The first one is at 44, and then the top one is at 96, and we'll just throw an arc on there just to complete that. And now we'll do an extrude cut through all. Let me turn off the sketches. And there's our base part with the hole cut out on the back. So let's do a file save as. Loft sample with cutout. Okay, now let's come back in here. Let's shorten our tree up a little bit. Come back here and we're going to edit this sketch. We're going to get rid of this arc, and we're going to complete from this point. We'll just go up. And don't have to worry about too much about constraining that for right now, but now we'll just complete that sketch. And now we cut out the body, and we have our cap left over. We can turn off our points and planes and axes. Okay, and we're going to do a file save as. Save that as our cap. And let's do some coloring on here. So we'll color this. So there's our red color. And we'll bring up our cutout sample again. And we'll color this. And this is going to be a purplish color. Okay. And now, finally, bring these two pieces into our assembly. And do select all and turn on our reference geometry. And we'll constrain these to our parent model. And likewise our cap. Close that. And there's our assembly. So, I hope this helps you out. The biggest thing is learning how to create these guide curves in the main part, and that's going to be the biggest trick to getting the shape defined. But hope this helps. So, anyway, enjoy. Talk to you later.